In the outer edge of the galaxy, far away from Earth, there was a large trade station called Caranine. It floated between stars like a giant metal city, full of ships, noise, and creatures from hundreds of worlds. Here, everyone came to buy, sell, and move on. But deep in the lower levels of the station, hidden behind thick doors and forgotten corridors, there lived a group no one wanted, the Velthary girls. The Velthary were an alien species known for their strange ways. Some said they were too wild, changing moods too fast. Others claimed they were too gentle, unable to fight or follow orders. Because of this, they were never chosen for work, trade, or partnership. Traders didn't want them. Officials didn't understand them. So the Velthary girls were kept in a holding bay, waiting for something, anything, but nothing came. Days passed, weeks passed. No one asked for them. The girls stayed silent, moving like ghosts in a cage. Their skin was soft with light blue and violet tones. Their eyes were wide, glowing faintly in the dark. Their ears were small and slightly pointed, almost like elves from old Earth stories. There were 5 of them in total, each one different in personality, but they all shared the same fate, unwanted and misunderstood. One of them, Nira, sat by the wall every day, watching the lights blink on the ceiling. She rarely spoke, but when she did, her voice was like a breeze, soft and careful, as if afraid it might hurt someone. Then one day, everything changed. A human arrived at Caranine. His name was Callan, and he wasn't like the others. He wasn't a soldier, a bounty hunter, or a rich merchant. He was just a repairman. He worked with machines, fixed broken ships, and lived a simple life on a small moon nearby. But he had a habit of exploring forgotten corners of stations during his trips. He liked finding old tech leftover parts or strange stories. He walked past the lower halls and saw a locked section marked Biohold Low-Value Assets. Curious, he asked the security bot what was inside. Velthary females, considered unstable. Not for sale. Scheduled for removal, the bot answered without emotion. Callan frowned. Removal? Transferred to remote labor zone. No return. He didn't like the sound of that. Something inside him told him to look. Using his pass, he entered the holding bay. The doors opened with a slow hiss, revealing a dim room with soft lights and quiet breathing. The Velthary girls turned their heads, surprised. No one had visited in days. Callan stood still. He expected something dangerous or strange. But instead he saw 5 young alien women, thin and quiet, sitting or lying on the cold floor. Their eyes met his, unsure he didn't say anything for a moment. Then he slowly took off his backpack, opened a small container, and placed a pack of warm food on the floor. I don't have much, he said, but I thought you might be hungry. None of them moved except Nira. She looked at the food, then at him. Carefully, she stepped forward, picked it up, and brought it back to the others. They sniffed it, tasted it, then started eating silently. Callan sat on the floor across from them. I'm not here to hurt you, he said. I just wanted to see you for myself. After a long pause, one of the other girls spoke softly. Why? No one comes here, another added. I guess that's the reason, Callan said. Everyone talks about you like you're broken. But you don't seem broken to me. The girls looked at each other. There was confusion in their eyes, but also a small spark, something like hope. Nira walked up to him, closer this time. She stared into his eyes, trying to understand him. Then, in her quiet voice, she asked, Do you believe we are not useless? Callan nodded. I believe nobody is useless, just misunderstood sometimes. She blinked, as if processing that truth. Then she surprised him. She sat beside him. From that moment, something began to shift. Later that day, Callan went to the station's office. He met the officer in charge and asked, What will happen to the Velthary girls? They'll be taken off station, the officer replied, bored. The council says they have no use. We don't want them causing problems. They didn't cause anything. You just don't understand them, Callan argued. The officer shrugged. Do you want them? Take them. But don't bring them back crying. That was how Callan found himself leaving Caranine with 5 Velthary girls on his ship. He didn't know what the future held, He didn't have a plan. But deep in his heart, he felt it was right. Someone had to give them a chance. Someone had to see their worth, and if no one else would, he would. Callan's small cargo ship was old but reliable. It had dents in the metal walls, blinking lights that sometimes flickered, and a soft hum in the engines that felt like a purring cat. The inside wasn't fancy, but it was clean and warm better than the cold-holding bay the Veltri girls had lived in. The 5 alien girls sat quietly in the corner of the main room, unsure of what to do. They didn't speak much, and their movements were small, careful, as if they were afraid to take up space. Callan gave them blankets, soft food, and warm drinks. "You can sleep anywhere you want. There are 2 spare bunks. I'll stay in the cockpit," he said with a smile. They nodded but didn't answer. Even Nira stayed silent. She kept glancing at him, curious but cautious as the ship moved through space toward his home moon. Callan sat in the pilot's chair thinking about what he had done. He didn't really plan to bring them with him, but now that they were here, he couldn't just turn back. They needed someone. And maybe, just maybe, he needed them too. The next day, they arrived at his home base on Selora 3, a quiet moon with wide plains, rocky hills, and purple skies. His base was small, just a hangar, a house, and a storage shed, but it had fresh air, peace, and safety. The Veltri girls stepped out slowly, blinking at the sunlight. One of them covered her eyes. Another bent down to touch the soft soil. "This is your home?" Nira asked quietly. Callan nodded. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's all mine." "It's calm," she said, almost surprised. Over the next few days, Callan tried to make them feel comfortable. He cooked simple meals, fixed up one of the spare rooms for them, and made sure they had warm clothes and soft shoes. But it wasn't easy. The girls didn't talk much. They sometimes reacted strongly to small sounds or bright lights. One of them broke a plate when startled by a loud beep from the oven. Another cried silently when Callan tried to ask her name. He didn't get angry. Instead, he listened. He began noticing their patterns. They didn't like sudden noise. They liked soft textures. They sat close to each other for comfort. They moved with grace, almost like dancers, but were always watching, always alert. One afternoon, Callan was working on an engine outside when Nira approached him. She stood a few feet away, her pale blue hands folded together. "Can I help?" she asked. Callan looked up, surprised. "You want to help?" She nodded. "You gave us safety? We want to give back." He smiled and moved over. "Sure, just don't touch this wire. It can shock you." Nira sat beside him and watched closely. She was quick. She didn't speak much, but she understood the tools fast. After 10 minutes, she was already handing him the right parts before he even asked. "You're a natural?" Callan said. "I remember machines," she said. "From our world, before we were taken." He didn't ask more. He didn't want to push. But in his heart, he knew these girls were far more than what the galaxy believed. That night, while everyone was inside, a small storm rolled over the moon. The wind howled and lightning flashed across the dark sky. The power flickered once, then came back. One of the girls, the youngest, panicked and ran to the corner of the room, covering her head. Another crouched down, shaking. Callan rushed in. "It's just a storm," he said gently. "Nothing will hurt you here." But they didn't calm down. Suddenly, Nira stepped between them and him. Her body trembled, but she spread her arms wide, shielding the others. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also determination. Callan froze. "You don't have to protect them from me," he said softly. "I'm not," she whispered. "I'm protecting you?" She might strike out by mistake. "When afraid, we react." Callan slowly knelt. "It's okay. I understand." He turned off the main lights and lit a few soft lamps instead. The storm passed after an hour, and slowly the girls relaxed. Later that night, Callan sat outside, staring at the stars. Nira came and sat beside him. "Do you still want us here?" she asked. He looked at her with gentle eyes. "Yes, I didn't bring you here as a job. I brought you here because I saw something in you that no one else did." "What did you see?" she asked, her voice so quiet the wind almost took it. He paused. "I saw people who were hurt but still kind. People who were strong, even if the galaxy called them weak. I saw worth. For the first time since he met her, Nira smiled. Small, real smile. In the days that followed, things began to change. The girls spoke more. They helped in the workshop. They laughed quietly among themselves. They even started decorating their shared room with stones, ribbons, and lights. Callan didn't try to change them. He learned their ways. He gave them space, listened when they talked, and respected their silence when they did idea in single quotes. And slowly, they began to trust, not because he forced them, but because he saw them not as tools or workers or problems, but as people. Callan's small cargo ship was old but reliable. It had dents in the metal walls, blinking lights that sometimes flickered, and a soft hum in the engines that felt like a purring cat. The inside wasn't fancy, but it was clean and warm better than the cold holding bay the Velthry girls had lived in. The 5 alien girls sat quietly in the corner of the main room, unsure of what to do. They didn't speak much, and their movements were small, careful, as if they were afraid to take up space. Callan gave them blankets, soft food, and warm drinks. You can sleep anywhere you want. There are 2 spare bunks. I'll stay in the cockpit, he said with a smile. They nodded but didn't answer. Even Nira stayed silent. She kept glancing at him, curious but cautious. As the ship moved through space toward his home moon, Callan sat in the pilot's chair thinking about what he had done. He didn't really plan to bring them with him, but now that they were here, he couldn't just turn back. They needed someone. And maybe, just maybe, he needed them too. The next day, they arrived at his home base on Salora 3, a quiet moon with wide plains, rocky hills, and purple skies. His base was small, just a hangar, a house, and a storage shed, but it had fresh air, peace, and safety. The Velthry girls stepped out slowly, blinking at the sunlight. One of them covered her eyes. Another bent down to touch the soft soil. "This is your home?" Nira asked quietly. Callan nodded. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's all mine." "It's calm," she said, almost surprised. Over the next few days, Callan tried to make them feel comfortable. He cooked simple meals, fixed up one of the spare rooms for them, and made sure they had warm clothes and soft shoes. But it wasn't easy. The girls didn't talk much. They sometimes reacted strongly to small sounds or bright lights. One of them broke a plate when startled by a loud beep from the oven. Another cried silently when Callan tried to ask her name. He didn't get angry. Instead, he listened. He began noticing their patterns. They didn't like sudden noise. They liked soft textures. They sat close to each other for comfort. They moved with grace, almost like dancers, but were always watching, always alert. One afternoon, Callan was working on an engine outside when Nira approached him. She stood a few feet away, her pale blue hands folded together. "Can I help?" she asked. Callan looked up, surprised. "You want to help?" She nodded. "You gave us safety? We want to give back." He smiled and moved over. "Sure, just don't touch this wire. It can shock you." Nira sat beside him and watched closely. She was quick. She didn't speak much, but she understood the tools fast. After 10 minutes, she was already handing him the right parts before he even asked. "You're a natural," Callan said. "I remember machines," she said. "From our world, before we were taken." He didn't ask more. He didn't want to push. But in his heart, he knew these girls were far more than what the galaxy believed. That night, while everyone was inside, a small storm rolled over the moon. The wind howled and lightning flashed across the dark sky. The power flickered once, then came back. One of the girls, the youngest, panicked and ran to the corner of the room, covering her head. Another crouched down, shaking. Callan rushed in. "It's just a storm," he said gently. "Nothing will hurt you here." But they didn't calm down. Suddenly Nira stepped between them and him. Her body trembled, but she spread her arms wide, shielding the others. Her eyes were filled with fear, but also determination. Callan froze. "You don't have to protect them from me," he said softly. "I'm not," she whispered. "I'm protecting you." She might strike out by mistake. "When afraid, we react." Callan slowly knelt. "It's okay. I understand." He turned off the main lights and lit a few soft lamps instead. The storm passed after an hour, and slowly the girls relaxed. Later that night, Callan sat outside, staring at the stars. Nira came and sat beside him. "Do you still want us here?" she asked. He looked at her with gentle eyes. "Yes, I didn't bring you here as a job. I brought you here because I saw something in you that no one else did." "What did you see?" she asked, her voice so quiet the wind almost took it. He paused. "I saw people who were hurt but still kind. People who were strong, even if the galaxy called them weak. I saw worth." For the first time since he met her, Nira smiled. A small, real smile. In the days that followed, things began to change. The girls spoke more. They helped in the workshop. They laughed quietly among themselves. They even started decorating their shared room with stones, ribbons, and lights. Life on Solora 3 slowly became peaceful for Callan and the Velthry girls. They turned the empty workshop into a home. The girls planted small glowing flowers in the soil around the base. They organized tools, cleaned old rooms, and even fixed up broken machines without being asked. Each girl had something special Nira worked closely with. Callan on repairs and planning. Veli loved to decorate and organize. Sira had sharp ears and could hear the smallest sounds. She was good at sensing storms early. Loma began painting symbols from their culture on the walls, giving the base color and warmth. And Taya, the youngest, often laughed the loudest and brought joy to everyone. For the first time in their lives, they were not just surviving. They were living, but peace never lasts forever. One morning, Callan received a warning on his old radio device. A small ship had entered Solara's space. It wasn't a trader or rescue ship. It belonged to the Union Enforcement Guild, the same organization that once labeled the Velthry girls as unstable. The message was simple: you are in violation. Surrender unauthorized assets immediately. Callan's heart sank. He rushed outside and found the girls already watching the sky. Nira stood at the front, her face calm but serious. "They found us," she said. Callan nodded. "I don't know how, but they're coming." The Velthry girls looked at each other. There was fear in their eyes, but not panic. "Not this time. We don't want to be taken again," Sira said. "They'll lock us away," Veli added. "Maybe worse." Callan looked at them, then at the sky. He clenched his fists. "Then we won't let them." The small ship landed just beyond the ridge. 3 figures stepped out in black armor Union officers. One of them, a tall woman with red markings on her uniform, walked toward Callan's base with a scanner in hand. Callan met her halfway. "You are harboring unstable life forms," she said coldly. "You were warned. They're not unstable," Callan replied. "They're living peacefully here. They're helping. They're free." "They were marked for relocation," she said. "You don't get to decide their status." Callan crossed his arms. "They're not objects. They're not tools. They're people." Behind him, Nira and the others stood silently. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They stood tall, side by side. The officer raised a hand. "Stand down, or we will use force." Nira stepped forward. "We will not go back." "Not to cages, not to silence," the officer laughed. "You can't stop us." But she was wrong. As the officers moved forward, something unexpected happened. The Velthry girls began to react not with violence, but with precision. Sira gave a soft signal. Loma triggered a small device that disabled the officers' scanners. Taya darted between shadows, pulling wires from their transport ship. Veli activated a nearby defense wall that Callan had thought was long broken. Nira stepped in front of Callan, ready to protect him. It was not chaos, it was coordination. The officers were shocked. They expected weakness, not strategy. "You trained them?" One officer shouted. "No," Callan said. "They learned this on their own." One of the officers reached for a weapon, but before he could aim, a loud alarm from their own ship went off. "Disabled engines." Taya smiled from behind the ridge, holding up a fried power coil. The officers had no choice but to retreat. As they climbed back into their broken ship, the leader looked at Callan one last time. "This isn't over. The Union doesn't forget." "And neither do we," Nira replied, when the ship finally lifted off, limping back into orbit. Callan let out a long breath. The Velthary girls gathered around him, tired but proud. You didn't run? He said, amazed. We've spent our whole lives running, Nira replied. Now we stand. Callan looked at them with new eyes. Not as guests, not as outsiders, but as partners. Later that night, Callan sat by the fire pit outside, staring into the flames. Nira joined him. They'll come back, she said. I know, Callan said quietly, but next time we'll be ready. She looked at him. Why did you risk everything for us? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because someone had to. Because I saw what others couldn't, Nira smiled gently. We were told we were too much, too wild, too soft, but you saw balance. You're not too much, he said. You're exactly enough. Over the next few days, the base was strengthened. The girls improved the defenses. Callan sent messages to nearby systems, trying to reach people who believed in freedom and justice. Because now it was no longer about saving 5 lives. It was about changing how the galaxy saw them. The Velthary girls had more to offer than anyone realized. And soon, the galaxy would know. Callan didn't try to change them. He learned their ways. He gave them space, listened when they talked, and respected their silence when they did in single quotes. And slowly, they began to trust, not because he forced them, but because he saw them not as tools or workers or problems, but as people. After the Union officers left Solora 3, the days became quiet again, but not peaceful. Callan knew they would return. The warning was clear. This isn't over. That meant trouble would come again. And next time, it might be worse. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The way the Velthary girls worked together during the attack was no accident. Their teamwork, timing, and instincts were beyond natural. It was like they were made for it. So, one morning, while the girls were tending to the garden they had planted near the base, Callan sat down with his old data tablet. He connected it to the Union's open archives, searching for anything about the Velthary. After hours of scanning, he found something surprising, a sealed science report from over 100 years ago. It described a project once funded by a distant research world. The goal: create a species that could emotionally connect with others, calm them during conflict, and build deep harmony in communities. They were supposed to become peacekeepers, healers, and support partners. The project name? Velthar Prime. Callan leaned forward, eyes wide. It wasn't an accident. The Velthary girls weren't failures. They were designed this way. But when the project was shut down due to budget cuts and fear of uncontrolled emotional energy, the Velthary were scattered, forgotten, and labeled unstable. They were never broken, Callan whispered. They were just abandoned. Later that evening, he sat with Nira near the fire pit. The others were laughing softly behind them, weaving glowing vines into a fence. The moonlight made their pale blue-purple skin shimmer. I found something, Callan said, showing Nira the tablet. She read quietly. Her hands trembled. They made us on purpose, she said. We were created to connect, to help. Callan nodded. You weren't meant to fight wars. You were meant to prevent them. Nira's eyes filled with tears, but not from sadness. From understanding. All this time, she whispered, we thought we were mistakes. You're not, Callan said gently. You were made with purpose. It was the galaxy that failed you. She looked at him, and in her gaze was something new hope. The next few days were busy. Callan helped each girl discover what they were best at. Not just for protection, but for living. Sarah, with her sharp hearing, created a warning system made of sound chimes and light flashes. Loma added more art to the walls and even painted parts of the ship. Her drawings helped calm the others during hard moments. Veli designed a system for organizing supplies using color and touch, perfect for their sensitive minds. Taya began writing a journal using pictures and symbols to tell their story. And Nira, she spent her time building a communication hub. She wanted the truth to spread. They were no longer just surviving, they were creating, inventing, and expressing themselves freely. One night, Callan found the 5 girls sitting in a circle, their hands linked. They were not talking, just quietly sitting, calm and focused. What are you doing? he asked. We're sinking, Nira said. Our minds are tuned to each other. We can feel when one of us is hurt or scared. It was part of our design. Callan blinked. Like a mental connection? She nodded. Not words. Just emotions and intent. Callan sat down nearby. I wish I could feel that. You already do, Nira said softly. That's why we trust you. 2 days later, a message came through the station. It was from an independent trader who heard rumors of the Union's raid on Salora 3. I saw your name on the alert list, the trader said. Be careful. The Union is planning something bigger. They think the Velthary girls are dangerous. They don't like that you're protecting them. Callan thanked him and shut off the comm. He looked at the girls, now playing in the soft grass outside. Even after all they had faced, they were laughing. He couldn't let anyone take that away. From them again, he turned to Nira. I think it's time we speak up. Nira tilted her head. How? We show the galaxy who you really are. Not the version they fear, but the truth. We send your message, your story, your proof. You believe they'll listen? She asked. Not everyone. But some will. And maybe that's enough to start something. She nodded slowly. Then we begin. The next day they recorded a message. Nira spoke, her voice calm and clear. We are the Velthary. We were made to heal, to support, and to care. But we were forgotten, left behind, labeled broken. We are not weapons. We are not threats. We are people with feelings, dreams, and strength. One human saw that, and because of him, we remember who we are. They added images of their life on Salora 3, their art, their machines, their teamwork. Callan sent the message through every open channel he could find, trader networks, public archives, and even old peacekeeping forums. It was a risk. But they had nothing more to lose that night. As the stars shined brightly over Salora 3, Callan sat beside the girls once more. He looked at Nira. No matter what happens, he said, I'm proud of you all. She looked at him with warm eyes. We're proud too. Because of you, we're not afraid anymore. And with that, the Velthary girls leaned against him. Watching the sky in silence, they had been called wild. They had been called too gentle. But now they were something else. Free. The message sent from Salora 3 spread faster than Callan expected. Within 2 days. Small ships began passing close to the moon. Some stayed silent. Others sent short transmissions. We heard you. We support you. Stay strong. Some were from traders, others from quiet groups who believed in freedom and truth. One message was even from an old Union scientist who whispered, The Velthary were never a mistake, I'm sorry. The message had touched something deep, but it also brought danger. On the third morning, Callan's sensors picked up another incoming ship. This one wasn't a trader. It wasn't quiet. It came fast, strong, and fully armed. A Union warship. They're here, Callan said, stepping back from the monitor. The Velthary girls gathered around him. Nira's eyes narrowed. They won't accept our words. They want silence. Callan nodded. They didn't like your voice reaching others. They want control back. But we won't go, said Loma. We won't be prisoners again. Outside, the sky turned silver as the Union ship lowered over the ridge. Dust blew across the ground. The ship's engines hummed like thunder. A voice crackled over the comm. Step forward, human. Bring the Velthary with you. No more warnings. You are charged with harboring unstable beings and spreading illegal messages. Callan stared at the speaker. His fingers curled tightly into fists. Then he looked at the girls. It's your choice. I won't force you. But I'll stand beside you, whatever you decide. For a moment they said nothing. Then Nira stepped forward, her chin raised. We go with you. Not to surrender, but to speak. Callan's shuttle rose into the sky, heading toward the Union ship. Inside, he sat beside Nira. The other 4 Velthary girls held hands. Combat ready, none of them showed fear. When the shuttle docked, they were met by guards with serious faces and stiff movements. No one offered greetings. They were taken to a large chamber filled with Union officials and observers from different planets. A few looked curious. Most looked cold. At the center of the room stood the lead officer from before the woman with red marks on her armor. Her eyes locked onto Nira. "So you return," she said flatly. "Still pretending to be valuable?" Nira didn't answer. Instead, Callan stepped forward. "They are valuable. Not because of some program, but because they feel, create, and think. They don't need to prove their worth to you, but they will." The officer raised an eyebrow. "This is not a stage. You are both here to face judgment." Then an older man in a black coat stepped forward. He was not dressed like a soldier. He wore a peaceful symbol on his chest, a symbol of the Interplanetary Justice Circle, a group that listened to rare cases when the Union failed. "Let them speak," he said. "They have that right." Nira stood in front of the panel. Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't lower. "We were made to help others feel safe," she said, "but we were treated like danger. We were taught to hide, to shrink, to stay silent, but that silence is not peace, it's fear. And we are done living in fear." She paused, then added, "We are not wild. We are not weak. We are Valkyrie. We feel deeply. We react strongly. That is not a flaw, it is our truth." The room was silent, then Sarah spoke next. "We learn fast. We work together. We don't need weapons to protect. We understand what others feel. That's why we can prevent harm before it starts." Then Veli added, "We don't want power. We want choice. We want to live as equals." Each of the girls shared something small, gentle, honest, and clear. Then Callan stepped beside them. "The Union sees them as a problem. I see them as hope. They show us what we forgot, that emotion isn't weakness and care isn't useless." The officials whispered among themselves. Some looked moved. Others still looked doubtful. Then the lead officer pointed at Callan. "You gave shelter to 5 classified beings. You disobeyed orders. What makes you think you can stand here and defend them?" Callan took a deep breath. "Because someone had to, and because you were wrong." Then the man from the Justice Circle raised his hand. "We've heard enough. Let us vote." 10 members stood up. Each had a token, red for rejection, green for freedom, one by one. The tokens dropped. Green, 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 red, green, 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 green. Green. The vote was clear. The Valkyrie girls were free. Back on Solora 3, the girls danced for the first time. Real dance. Laughing, twirling, running barefoot in the soil they had planted. Callan watched from the steps, tired but smiling. Nira sat beside him. "They listened," she said. He nodded. "Because your truth was louder than their lies." "What happens now?" she asked. He looked at the stars. "Now the galaxy knows who you are. And maybe others like you will stop hiding." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You gave us a voice." "No," he replied softly. "You had it all along. You just needed someone to hear it." Peace had finally returned to SEL-0-3. The skies were clear. The wind was soft. The stars above blinked like a quiet promise. The Union had accepted the vote. The Valkyrie girls were now free, not just in hiding, but by law. They could stay. They could speak. They could live. Callan still worked in his small hangar, fixing engines and broken machines. But now he wasn't alone. The base had become more than a home. It was now a symbol of something greater. Other people started to arrive. A ship carrying 3 diplomats from a nearby peaceful world came to visit. A small group of researchers followed, asking questions. With respect, not judgment. A message came from a distant moon, where a few other Valkyrie girls were found and rescued. And through it all, the 5 girls who once had no voice became leaders. One morning, Nira stood on the platform outside the base. She wore simple clothes, but there was something noble in the way she held herself now. Behind her, Veli was painting new symbols on the wall, bright and glowing. Sira stood on the rooftop adjusting a new signal dish. Loma sat in the garden, humming while writing in a soft notebook. Antea was inside, laughing with a curious visitor who had never met a Valkyrie before. Callan stepped outside, wiping grease from his hands. "They're coming," Nira said. "I know," he smiled. "Are you ready?" She nodded. "I'm not afraid anymore." Minutes later, a hovercraft arrived with a soft whoosh of air. It opened, revealing a small team from the Interplanetary Peace Council. They were offering support supplies, education, and legal tools to help more Velthari across the galaxy. A tall woman in a silver coat stepped forward. "Are you the one who started this movement?" she asked Callan, who looked at Nira, then shook his head. "No, I just gave them space to grow. They did the rest." The woman smiled. "Then you've done more than enough." Over the next few weeks, the base changed. It wasn't just a shelter anymore. It became a center, the Velthari Sanctuary. They built new rooms with help from engineers and volunteers. There was a learning hall, a garden dome, and quiet resting spaces designed by the girls themselves. But what made it truly special wasn't the buildings. It was the way it felt. There was kindness in every corner, joy in every hallway, calm in every conversation. Even those who came angry or scared left with peace in their hearts. One evening, Callan sat by the fire pit again, the same spot where so many things had begun. Nira sat beside him, holding a soft tablet filled with notes. "We've received over 30 requests," she said. "More Velthari. Some hiding, some lost, some afraid to speak. They want to come," Callan nodded. "They'll be safe here," she turned toward him. "But what about you? This was your home before us," he smiled. "It's still my home. But now it feels more alive." She was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Why did you care so much?" He paused, looking into the fire. "Because I know what it feels like to be ignored, to be seen as not useful. I've been called a nobody before. I didn't want anyone else to feel that way, especially not someone like you." She placed her hand gently over his. "You saw us. When no one else did, you saw yourselves," he replied. "I just reminded you." Later that night, a quiet celebration began. Loma had painted the garden rocks with glowing paint. Taya danced between lights. Sira and Veli prepared soft music. Callan played a simple instrument he hadn't touched in years. There was no big speech. No flashing lights. Just laughter, music, and peace. Visitors from nearby stations sat with the girls. They listened to stories of the past not with pity, but with respect, and Nira, for the first time, danced with Callan. Her movements were gentle, smooth, and full of feeling. "I never learned to dance," she whispered. "You're doing just fine," Callan said. They laughed together under the stars. Months passed. The galaxy changed slowly. More Velthari were found, protected, and accepted. Some went to other planets to help. Some stayed at the sanctuary to teach others. A few even joined science teams helping with healing programs and peace talks between old enemies and the Union. They changed too, not fully, not quickly, but the vote had started a shift. New voices were rising, ones who believed in respect over control. Callan was once just a mechanic, a quiet man with a simple life, but in choosing to see what others ignored, he had helped change the future. One day a visitor asked him, "Why didn't you turn them away like everyone else?" Callan looked at Nira, who was speaking gently to a young Velthari girl who had just arrived. Then he answered, "Because they weren't too wild. They weren't too gentle. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. The problem was never them. It was us for not listening." The visitor nodded, writing his words down. As the sun set, the sky over Salora 3 turned soft purple. The sanctuary lights came on, one by one, and far beyond the moon and corners of the stars, others began to whisper. "The same thing. The Velthari have returned. And this time they are not alone."